Well, good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be able to do this for you folks in Cynthiana. What we're going to do here is, well, first of all, I'm Charles All. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Chamber Center for Policy and Research. I have Lisa Johnson's name on here, but Lisa's not with me today, but she's done this presentation with me before. What I'm going to do is offer a really quick overview of Kentucky's new Employee Child Care Assistance Partnership. This is a brand new program in the state of Kentucky that is also unique to Kentucky. And specifically, it targets childcare challenges faced by working families in Kentucky and seeks to create a solution for that that's good for those employees, but then also for employers who are oftentimes struggling with workforce challenges. So I'm going to start with just some of the background as to where this program came from and the problem that it's trying to solve. Specifically within Kentucky, one of the biggest economic challenges that we deal with are workforce shortages. And this is something that for any employer that's watching this is going to be a very, very familiar problem. It's been a theme not only throughout our post-COVID era, but then also even preceding COVID, when we had a lot of workforce challenges. That's a nationwide issue. There's a whole lot of different things going on there, but in Kentucky, it just tends to be a little bit worse than what we see elsewhere in the nation. And a great example of that is if you look at workforce participation. Workforce participation is simply the percentage of adults that are actually participating in the workforce. Kentucky ranks about 7th in the nation with a rate of around 57%, far, far lower than the national rate, closer to around 62%. In 2021, the Chamber produced a large report dissecting this challenge and looking through some of the different factors that contribute to it. And this was a report called 20 Years in the Making, Kentucky's Workforce Crisis. And one of the things we did with that report was we outlined some of the different causes that were leading to Kentucky's workforce challenges. And childcare was one of the top issues that we identified as one of the major reasons why we have such challenges of workforce participation and workforce availability. It's one of those issues that's really just not that hard to explain to folks. A lot of the issues I try to explain, they tend to be extremely complicated. This one's really straightforward. And it's as simple as if you're a parent of a young child and you can't find a safe, healthy place for that child to be for roughly 8 hours a day, then you probably cannot work for 8 hours a day. And in fact, you probably just can't participate in the labor market at all. And this is an extremely real problem faced by thousands of working Kentucky families every single day. You can see some of the headlines that are outlined over here on the right side of the screen. This great piece from the Wall Street Journal. We've had some op-eds published on it in some Kentucky news outlets. Some survey data, I think, does a really good job of illustrating this. 4 in 10 working parents with young children have quit a job due to childcare responsibilities. That's from a survey from 2022. That same survey showed that 1 in 3 working parents with young children report leaving the workforce altogether at some point because of childcare. So it's a very, very real problem faced by a lot of working families, and helps us understand why we have so many workforce challenges, especially for these folks with young kids. Workforce challenges in Kentucky and throughout the nation as a whole, it's really a two-part problem. One is a supply side issue, just the sheer availability of childcare. This chart here takes a look at the number of licensed or certified childcare providers in Kentucky from 2012 to 2022. We lost about 40% of our childcare providers within that time frame. And throughout the course of COVID, we saw an even more dramatic drop. A lot of that drop has happened in the past couple of years. But it's been a long-term trend. And so that makes it harder and harder to find. If you are a family, however, that actually finds childcare, what you're going to discover is that it is remarkably expensive. And just 2 quick examples of that here, where you can see that the cost of childcare generally tends to rival the cost of a mortgage in a lot of different communities in Kentucky. So here in Crittenden County, for example, quality care for a toddler, that's about $6,900 per year. It's about $7,000 per year for an average mortgage in that county. You can see a similar dynamic playing out in Pike County. And so oftentimes what a lot of families find is that it just makes more economic sense to not work while the children are of an age where they need childcare, because the math just doesn't add up for a lot of these families. I talked to one individual just a few days ago who has 3 children, all below the age of 5. And her childcare bills annually are north of $30,000 a year. It's an extraordinary amount of money. I've seen this happen in my own family, where I had a relative who was a science teacher in a rural part of the state, and she left the workforce for 5 years. Had 3 kids that were young, and it just made more sense for her to step out of the workforce. That's a big loss when you have a science teacher leaving a rural school district. That's something we certainly want to try to prevent whenever we can do that. There's a lot of different solutions that need to take place in terms of addressing some of these childcare challenges, but employers can be a really important part of the solution. And one of the things that I think is a really good way to try to get at this problem is to leverage private sector engagement to assist working parents with the high cost of childcare. And that's really what we're going to be talking about the rest of the day. There's an availability side of things, but there's also an issue related to affordability as well. And I just got to notice that my slides are not transitioning or you're not able to see them. I'm going to pause. Claire, are they moving?
Yeah, no, maybe stop, share screen, and then start again. It's stuck on the first slide. There we go.
So what do you see now?
How employers can be part of the solution.
All right, give me 1 second. My apologies, Tommy. And Claire, we might be able to edit out some of this.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I got to find the... All right, we're back after a quick technical difficulty. So where we're going with this is we really want to focus on helping employers be part of the solution and addressing the affordability side of childcare. There's a lot of other things that need to happen on the supply side, but there really is a key way that employers can play a role in just helping everyday working families with the overall cost of childcare, and that can help keep that employee in the workforce and ideally help keep them tethered to that employer as well, which should be one of the goals of this. Survey data shows that this could have a really big impact. 85% of working parents say they would find it helpful if their employer offered a benefit to help them pay for childcare. About 67% of workers not receiving childcare benefits say they would be more loyal to their current employer if they did receive some sort of childcare benefit. And so that's really one of the things that we've been wanting to try to do. Another thing that survey data shows us, though, is that there seems to be a gap in employer awareness of some of the childcare challenges faced by their workers. Keep in mind the data we just looked at that emphasized how much of how important childcare benefits are to everyday workers with young children. On the employer side, though, what we see is a lot of employers don't quite seem to realize how big of an impact this might be having on their workforce. For example, this survey here shows that nearly 70% of employers reported that childcare access and affordability does not impact employee retention or hiring at their firm. And we also see that only about 18% of employers offered some form of benefit to their employees with children to help them pay for childcare. So there is a big opportunity here for employers if they're willing to kind of get in this game and help their staff with some of their childcare challenges. And this is ultimately what led us to House Bill 499, which was passed in the 2022 legislative session that created this new program called the Employee Childcare Assistance Partnership. And this was legislation sponsored by Representative Samara Heavrin out of Grayson County. And so the idea behind this project or this partnership program is that it's a public-private partnership model that aims to encourage and empower employer engagement in the exact same ways that we've been talking about. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the framework and concept. If you are an employer who is willing to offer financial assistance to an employee to help them cover the cost of childcare, the state can step in and they can match that on a dollar for dollar basis. So for example, if as an employer, you offer $100 to help that employee per month to go towards their childcare costs, the state will step in, match that on a dollar for day basis, giving that employee a $200 total benefit, although the cost to the employer would only be half of that, would just be $100. And that could help defray the overall cost for that particular worker when it comes to their childcare expenses, thus keeping them in the workforce and hopefully keeping them tethered to that employer as well, which is a really, really important part of this whole process. There's all sorts of rules, all sorts of details that go along with this. Some good examples of that. The payments that are made by the employer for that employee, that goes directly to the child care provider. Similarly, the state match, that goes directly to the child care provider itself. That will require individual employers to set up new vendor accounts if they choose to participate in this program. One of the pros and cons with that, one of the good things about that is that it allows us to know exactly where the dollars are going. And so we can be sure that these dollars are being fully utilized for childcare. That does create some administrative burden, though, for employers. They're going to have to set up new vendor accounts, have those relationships with those childcare providers, and add this as sort of part of their payroll process at the end of the day. And so that is going to be something that'll have to be worked through. Similarly, not all childcare providers are eligible for this. And this is another important part of this system. Only childcare providers that participate in the Kentucky All-Stars program. And so that's Kentucky's quality rating system. They can have any rating within that rating system. Essentially, what this means is that they are a licensed, certified childcare provider. And the idea there is to simply prevent situations where maybe, someone down the street is watching the kid a few hours a day, plopping them in front of a TV type situation. With state dollars involved, we really want to make sure that all of these dollars are going to not only support access to childcare and affordability, but we're also going to be supporting quality early childhood learning experiences at the same time. And that's a really important component of this, because it allows us to kind of maximize and optimize these dollars to get multiple benefits out of them. I think one of the most important things to understand about this program is that, first of all, it is new. It's a brand new program. The state has been in the process of rolling it out for the past several months, but it is now live. And so we have employers that are actively participating in it. And throughout this process, we're all learning quite a bit. It's a pilot program. We certainly anticipate that it's going to change over time. So if you're an employer who is interested in utilizing this program, but you find out, okay, this maybe isn't going to be the best fit for us, that's really good feedback that should be communicated. Communicate that to the chamber, communicate that to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services that's responsible for administering the program. All of that is important because that can be utilized to make the program better in the future. The other thing that's important to understand is the program is unique to Kentucky. No other state quite has something like this. Michigan has had something kind of similar for a little while on a much smaller scale. Florida used to have a comparable program. Beyond that, no one else is doing this. Other states, however, are really interested in it. North Carolina has considered it. Texas has considered it. There's been interest in several other states. But for right now, it's something that's unique to Kentucky, and it's a product that will be only utilized by Kentucky employers. As I mentioned, it is a pilot program. We're learning from it. There's a lot of reporting requirements that come with it that will allow us to measure success. The program has more money than we'll probably need, certainly in this first year, but about $15 million is appropriated for it in this initial year. We hope that will roll over into future years. But if you're an employer that wants to utilize it, you can rest assured there's still plenty of money to go around, and there's plenty of opportunities for you to utilize it. Our HR team over here at the chamber, we are using this program. We wanted to learn about it. And so we've gone through the process of applying for it and have kind of learned a little bit about the ins and outs of it. Some of the recommendations from our HR team over here is, the first, you want to learn about the childcare challenges of your workforce. One of the best ways to do that is you can survey your employees. The chamber has a survey tool that you can utilize it. I'll link to that here in just a minute, but you're really going to want to get a sense of how many employees you have that might utilize this program, how many of them might be eligible for it. And then after that, you probably want to take a look at the application. The application can be found on the Cabinet for Health and Family Services website. Again, we'll link to that here in just a minute. Take a look through that application, get a good understanding of what you're going to need to apply for it. And then you're going to need to have budget conversations and also some financial planning. Figure out how much can you afford to contribute based on how many employees might be eligible. There's no minimum here. So if you want to do $50 a month for an employee, you can do $50 a month. That's completely okay. Similarly, there's no maximum. Of course, the full cost of care would certainly probably be the maximum that would want to be considered here. But those budget conversations would be an important part. Once you get to that point, you'll need to work with those individual employees to go about filling out the application. And so there's the first part of the application is filled out by the employer. The second part is filled out by the individual employee. And then the third part is filled out by the child care provider. In terms of getting the childcare provider to fill that out, that could be done by the employer, could be done by the employee. It's however you want to structure that partnership. There's a lot of flexibility built into it. And then after that, you simply submit the application via email directly to the cabinet. Within 30 days, you'll receive a response. One thing to be aware of for any employers that are interested in it is we have had some applications denied. And generally one of two things is causing applications to be denied. One is the childcare provider might not be eligible. They might not be a childcare provider that's participating in the quality rating system, or the employee might hit an income threshold that makes them eligible for a different program. And that other program is called CCAP, which is the Childcare Assistance Program. That's our subsidy program. If the employee has a household income that makes them eligible for that, the state will simply deny their application for this program and refer them to the CCAP program, at which point the employer doesn't need to do anything at all. The good news for both the employer and the employee is that that means they're essentially eligible for almost entirely free childcare. They may have not known it, so the employer got to play that role of connecting that employee to that free childcare. But that's essentially what would happen. They would go then apply for the CCAP program and then start receiving that subsidy. Some of the top items that recommended by our HR team is there is an FAQ that the chamber has worked on in consultation with Kentucky SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. We have an FAQ. I'll link to that in a minute, but that's a good thing to share with employees and employers. Employees might want to pay particular attention to the amount of the state match. Not everyone receives the same, but everyone does receive something. The idea is folks on the sort of lower to middle income household scale, in terms of how much money their household brings in every year, they're going to receive a larger match from the state. Your higher income families, they'll receive a slightly smaller match. That's completely out of the control of the employer. That's something that's dictated by state law. That first section of the application, if you download that thing and take a look at it, this is completed by the employer. You'll want to have things like, employee verification information, wages paid to the employee during the previous year. And a lot of this, our HR team forms, you could essentially just pre-populate if you're submitting multiple applications. A lot of it is pretty straightforward on the first part of things. Once that is up and running, though, one of the things you'll need to make sure your finance department is aware of is, again, those payments need to go out to individual childcare providers, not to the employee themselves. That's a really, really important component of this in order to make sure everything runs smoothly. In terms of resources, where you can learn more, of course, the Division of Childcare website, that's where you can see a program overview, you can access the application, and you can also learn about additional state childcare resources, such as the Childcare Assistance Program, which is, again, the state subsidy program. Go to the Kentucky Chamber's website, kychamber.com/childcare. We have an FAQ that's dedicated to this program. There's a resource guide, and that resource guide can tell you about not just this program, but other programs that could be useful, and things such as tax incentives that could be helpful for an employer that might be looking at a different way to address some of those childcare challenges for the workers. There is a recommended employee survey template, and then also easy access to the application. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for anybody that's interested in participating in the program. With that, Tommy, were there any other questions you would want me to address before we wrap things up?
Sorry, I was frozen. No,
Right.
I think you've covered a lot of it, and I really appreciate the time that you took to kind of go in and explain this. And if anybody has any questions, like you said, you can reach out to me or to the Kentucky Chamber, and we can get you situated. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Tommy. All right. With that, Claire, do you want to stop the recording?